The then 14-year-old made her way from her home in Parkland, Florida, to Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, as usual. I was born in Parkland, she says. It's a small, cute little town where everybody is very close-knit. My mom would be like, "Oh, lock the front door," or "put the alarm on." And I'd be like, "We literally live in Parkland. It's just a waste of time." Parkland is a wealthy, green suburb set in a nook of the verdant fringes of the vast Everglades National Park. Its population of 30,000 can enjoy airboat rides through the marshes, a dog park called Barklands, and zoning laws that aim to preserve the park-like character of the city. "I guess it's always been perceived as very innocent," said Eden. "It's always been known it's one of the richest in South Florida, whatever." 14 years old, remember. At 2:19 p.m. on February 14th of that year, Nicholas Cruz clambered out of a goldfish-colored Uber with a duffel bag and a backpack and began walking purposefully toward Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. The 19-year-old former student was carrying an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle, which over the course of 6 or 7 minutes, he would use to kill 17 people and injure another 17. Eden was in her third period class, English. Her 14-year-old friend, Alyssa Al-Hadef, sat beside her in room 1216 on the first floor. Alyssa was a close friend of Eden's, the kind of person she'd go to the movies with or call up just to hang out. They stayed at each other's houses and occasionally pranked strangers. Eden liked that Alyssa didn't really care what other people thought of her. They shared a mutual dislike of their English class. "We never really liked it," Eden says. "It was always so boring. Like, it was terrible. I was thinking of dropping it at one point." The pair were writing an essay in silence when they heard an unfamiliar sound. "My mind couldn't identify it as a gunshot because I had never heard one before," Eden says. The fire alarm sounded. As its wail echoed through the corridors, it was punctuated by muffled screams, the quick patter of children's feet through the corridor, and the explosive rattle of gunfire. Alyssa turned to Eden with an unfamiliar look on her face. "At that moment, I knew something was wrong," says Eden. The class scattered. Alyssa and Eden ran in opposite directions. "Somehow I ended up under the table next to the desk right across from the door," Eden says. Alyssa and another friend scrambled back towards Eden, kneeling under the table, clutching hands. Alyssa peered over at the door. Eden placed a bin in front of her and locked eyes with Alyssa in petrified silence. "I heard shots in the hallways," she says. "I heard them coming closer. And then at that moment, I was like, he's coming to my class. He's shooting my class. He's in my class." And I remember hearing it, but as I was hearing it, I was waiting. I was waiting for the shot to be me. I was waiting to be shot. I wasn't like, I hope. I was waiting to feel it, and I didn't feel it. Alyssa fell moments later. It happened so quickly that Eden never even saw the gun. The gunman smashed through the glass of the locked classroom door and unloaded several rounds from the .223 caliber weapon. A hail of bullets peppered the walls of the room, filling the air with thick clouds of dust and gun smoke and an acrid, smoky odor. Eden started calling Alyssa's name, but was immediately silenced by her classmates, afraid the gunman would return. "And then he did come back," says Eden. "I was so trapped. I couldn't help her. I couldn't call for her. I couldn't make any noise. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. And I couldn't say anything without putting myself in extreme danger." Eden closed her eyes and clenched her fists. The sound of her teacher calling 911 was the next thing she remembers. And then I realized Alyssa wasn't the only one, she says. 3 people inside Eden's classroom were killed by the gunman. In less than 10 minutes, he injured 34 people, 17 of whom died, before dropping the rifle and his backpack and fleeing the scene. The first officers entered the building at 2:32 p.m., by which time the gunman was making his way to a grocery store where he bought a drink before heading to a fast food restaurant. He was arrested in a nearby neighborhood over an hour later. Meanwhile, officers had reached Eden's classroom and begun evacuating the students. They were yelling at us, "Run, run, run, run!" That's when I started running. I've never run faster. Outside, there was a growing crowd of students, parents, and media. Eden called her mom. My mom was like, "You're okay, right? Like nothing happened to you? You didn't see anything?" And I was like, "No. Alyssa got shot right next to me." The scene was thick with cars, a relative rarity in Parkland. Eden left the confusion with her mom to go to a friend's house where she turned on the news. I remember it kept saying 5 dead, 6 dead, 7 dead. It just kept going up. And that's when I realized how bad it was. I never would have thought 17 people would die. That's a lot of people. It seems like you put a bomb off in a classroom. In the months following the shooting, Eden has gone back to school. She and her classmates have been through a lot of therapy, and today she is still coming to terms with her experience. Sometimes she finds herself rewatching videos from February 14th. I can say it 500 times, like, yes, I saw my friends die. But a part of me will always be questioning, I guess, because it's so hard to believe. Reliving it is a way to get clarity on what happened. I guess it takes away some of the numbness that I feel. Please rise if you are willing or able.
The darkness deepens, still This morning, we're going to share with you a video about gun violence in Cedar Rapids. I will let you know that in a couple of instances, the language is language that we normally would not hear in the sanctuary, but we hear it in the context of this video this morning. Pretty scary as well. Let me say, first of all, thanks to the Reverend Dr. Jeremy Brigham, who sent me a PowerPoint that supplied lots of information for what I'm about to share. Some of you may know Jeremy, former pastor at Peoples, as well as a former professor at Kirkwood, and he was at the University of Iowa at the time of one of the first mass shootings in the state of Iowa back in 1991. He's been active in gun violence prevention since that time. But, you know, things like mass shootings don't happen in Iowa, right? At least not until Des Moines East a few weeks ago. And they don't happen in Cedar Rapids, at least until Taboo a couple of weeks ago. You know, the scary thing is that I would venture a guess that no one over the age of 18 who is here this morning ever practiced an armed intruder drill when you were in school as a student. But now it is something that is commonplace. Gun violence is everywhere. The NRA claims 5 million members. That's only 1.5% of all Americans. But 93% of all gun owners and 80% of hunters are not members of the NRA. But who speaks so strongly in the area of guns, and it is the NRA? They claim that mental illness is the cause of gun violence. Mental illness is a factor in gun violence only 4% of the time. An American is shot every 5 minutes. An American dies by gunfire every 14 minutes. 323 Americans are shot and 104 die every day. In 2021, over 5,000 kids under 18 were injured or killed by guns. Now, all of the cities in Lynn County, there are only 3 cities with more than 5,000 people. So 5,000 people would wipe out the entire population of Central City, of Lisbon, of Marion, of Fairfax, of Walford. It would wipe out 67% of the city of Hiawatha. 5,000 people. It is the second leading cause of death for all children and youth, and the leading cause of death for young African American men. Women are 21 times more likely to be murdered with a gun in the U.S. than in other high-income countries. In the states that require a background check before every handgun sale, 46% fewer women are shot to death by their domestic partners. Here in Iowa, in an average year, 281 people die by guns. 79% of those are suicides. 67% of gun owners cite personal protection as the primary reason to buy a gun. But a gun in your home is 22 times more likely to injure or kill a family member than it is to be used in self-defense. And women living in a home with a gun are 5 times more likely to be murdered by a domestic partner. And how often do we pick up the paper? Well, don't pick up the paper anymore. Go into a website and see where a toddler or a child has taken a gun and shot themselves or another toddler or a child in a home. It happens way, way too often. And what can we do? We can advocate for stricter gun laws. We can let our positions be known, let our feelings be known to our legislators and to our elected leaders. There's a move across Iowa right now to get counties to say that anything goes when it comes to guns. Several counties have adopted that and saying that they don't care what the law says, nothing's going to be regulated basically with guns. We need to let our legislators and our local officials know that that's not okay for us or for anyone. Write letters. Do Facebook posts. And I know you guys know how to do Facebook posts because I read them. So change from the hilarious ones to the serious ones and share about gun violence and the problems with it. Blogs, other media. Speak up. Talk to your children, your grandchildren. Become that cranky old neighbor and talk to the neighbor kids and tell them how important it is to stay away from guns. There's a program in Cedar Rapids called Gun Violence Intervention. The GVI model reduces group-related violence by focusing on those who are at a very high risk for violent victimization. And you saw part of it in the video. And that is usually an extremely small percentage of any given community. By concentrating on those individuals and coordinating with key stakeholders, law enforcement, social services, and community-based groups, the model interrupts the silence of violence and retaliation. Besides reducing violence, GVI also works to build trust between the community and the criminal justice agencies. Many of the strategies of GVI are based on the fact that communities are not dangerous, and violence is indeed carried out by a small group of people. The Social Justice Committee has set up training for GVI beginning on Thursday, May 12th, lasting for, and I'm trying to do the math here, 4 weeks. 4 weeks. And it's going to begin at 3:30 each of those Thursdays. You are invited to be involved in that training. It will be via Zoom, and you can do it from the comfort of your home. But I encourage you to reach out to the office and let us know that you want to be part of it, or reach out to the Social Justice Committee at their new email address, which is pcuusocialjustice@gmail, and let them know that you would like to be involved in that. We have to do something. We can't just sit by and watch because, you know, folks, it's not out there anymore. It never really was out there. It's been here in Cedar Rapids, in Iowa, and there is more and more of it everywhere. We must stand up. We must say enough is enough. Amen. Hear the words of this prayer by the Reverend M. Barclay of Infleshed. Gentle presence, patient listener, holy holder of it all, my prayer is this: I am so sad. It's not an ask. It's not a confession. It's an offering, the only one I have today. I'm praying it with hope. I know grief is a lifeline, tethering me to the world that should be, the one worth fighting for. As a practice of faith, I will not deaden these feelings that let me know all is not well. I will not adjust to cruelty or disregard for life, detaching myself from humanity, mine or others. I will not allow once imaginable scenarios to be turned into everyday losses that no longer pierce my soul. And so here are my tears, and here is my tired body. And here is my foggy, distracted mind, bearing witness to the place within that aches for the ones I love, for friends and strangers, for everyone being pushed into impossible situations. My sadness is a testimony. It is not my only one. Tomorrow, hope or fight or curiosity will bear their truth and pull me back into the labors I love in the company of others. But today, the only riot in me is this sorrow, refusing to quiet your cry from within. We are made for so much better than this. This is the time for candles, a time when you light a candle for something on your heart. Kathleen and I will each light candles and place them in the bowl. For those of you who would like to participate, you're invited to come forward, take a candle, light it from the large candle, and place it in the bowl. As you come forward, please be aware of social distancing. This morning, we will once again light candles for the victims of the Cedar Rapids shooting and all of the recent shootings, as well as all of those impacted and lost by COVID.
There's a lot of work to be done in the world, and now we accept your gracious offerings to help peoples do that work in the world. Looks like for those of us in the sanctuary, plates will be passed. If you are not present today in the church, you know that you can send a check to Peoples at the Gordon Avenue address. You can go to the peoplesuu.org website in the upper right-hand corner and click on Donate Now. Or if you want to be fancy, you can donate using the Vanco app on your smartphone. As always, we are so appreciative of your supporting us in the work of People's Church. We'll sing 3 verses. The wind of change forever blown across the tumult of the way. Tomorrow's unborn griefs depose the sorrows of our yesterday. Dream yields to dream, strife follows strife, and death unweaves the webs of life. For us the labor and the heat, the broken secrets of our pride, the strenuous lessons of defeat, the flower deferred, the fruit denied, but not the peace supremely won, great Buddha of the lotus throne. With futile hands we seek to gain our inaccessible desire, diviner summits to attain, with faith that sinks and feet that tire, but not shall conquer or control the heavenward hunger of our soul.
Let me say I am humbled and honored to be able to stay here a second year in the interim role. And I look forward to it, and I also hope and pray that I don't spend nearly as much time in Des Moines as I did this past year. Will you join me in the words to extinguish our chalice this morning? We extinguish this chalice flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go now in peace, living and acting on your principles and your beliefs, and helping the world be a better place.